Explain like I'm 5. What is the paradox of tolerance and is it legit? It's the idea that you cannot be tolerant of the intolerant in a tolerant society. The big problem with it is that it is constantly weaponized to justify dehumanizing anyone who disagrees with the speaker. It's used to shut down discussions by claiming the opponent is intolerant and therefore must be removed from the conversation. Baraka, I want to eat you. You know you can't. Baraka, I see your promises of equality and tolerance are all lies. The paradox of tolerance is the idea that, in order to be maximally tolerant, you must permit behavior that is not tolerant, resulting in an environment that is ultimately not tolerant. This only a paradox if you think of tolerance as a moral rule rather than what it is. A social contract. The social contract of tolerance is this: those that tolerate will be tolerated. You aren't obligated to tolerate people that don't obey the social contract themselves. And you have good reasons not to. By nature, a space where you tolerate intolerance, then the space just becomes a space for the intolerant. A space where we tolerate Jewish people and anti-Semites isn't exactly a safe space for Jewish people. Because it's a place full of anti-Semites who are allowed to do whatever they want. In order to have a tolerant space, we can't tolerate intolerance. It's 100% legit, but also it's a smokescreen that a lot of liberals with conservative attitudes use to justify their shithead behavior. Like pretty much every political theory of discourse. Let's say, I am tolerant of everyone. That means you accept murderers, racists, etc. If I change the phase to I'm only tolerant of people who are tolerant to everyone, that would exclude yourself, as you are no longer tolerant of intolerant people. At some point, if you want a tolerant world, you have to exclude a group of people. How long can you tolerate Nazis before the Nazis take over? Kill all the people who tolerated them, and then start a 1,000-year regime of intolerance? It's not actually a paradox. Tolerance, inclusivity are principles that manifest as a set of behaviors policy. It's usually tolerance to variation in benign, immutable characteristics. People who behave antithetical to those principles do not have to be tolerated. The only people that act like they must be are strawmanning tolerance to be anything is acceptable, which obviously leads to absurdity. The paradox of intolerance explains that even tolerance must have limits, otherwise society rapidly becomes intolerant. To put it another way, if you value free speech, you must oppose Nazism. Nazis are pretty famously anti-free speech, so if you really value the ability for people to openly criticize the government, you must shut down Nazis when you see them. Others have explained what it is. But part of why the paradox of tolerance exists is because people misunderstand the purpose of tolerance and start to believe that tolerance itself is a virtue. And it's not. Respect is a virtue and tolerance is the just first step towards getting there. Tolerance is a ceasefire. Allowing intolerance is allowing one side to unilaterally violate the ceasefire without repercussion, which defeats the entire goal of tolerance. Getting people to eventually respect each other, or at a bare minimum to leave each other in peace. I don't believe it is because it places the user as the judge, jury and executioner. Paradoxical thinking will justify abhorrent behavior because you judge your adversary intolerable by your own standards. For example, it's used as an excuse to deplatform speakers of an opposing political party and excuses the authoritarian methods to do so. To badly paraphrase another comment I saw ages ago, tolerance is part of the social contract. We all agree to various rules as a society to keep the peace. E.g., no murder. Cars stay on one side of the road. Cover your sneezes, etc. If you are intolerant in a way that would harm someone else, You have broken the social contract and are therefore no longer entitled to tolerance. You can hate a person in your head all you want, but when you call for violence or perpetrate it, you aren't tolerable anymore. Ironically, it seems that unlimited tolerance, or at least too much, guarantees a society gets invaded by the intolerant, who rapidly destabilize those societies that depended on everyone being tolerant of everyone else. The explain like I'm 5 version is if everyone tolerates people who want to murder them and take over, then those people will murder them and take over, and will not tolerate anyone. People think tolerance means let other people do whatever they want and you just need to deal with it. This is false. And the paradox of tolerance shows how it makes everything fall apart. The solution is to understand that tolerance is a peace treaty, not a surrender. If someone violates that peace treaty, then they are no longer protected by it and they no longer need to be tolerated. I've always understood the paradox of tolerance to mean tolerance as a rule, which includes tolerating intolerance, which breaks the rule. It's a paradox because in order to protect tolerance, you must be intolerant to intolerance. We tolerate Muslims, and when we tolerate enough Muslims, they apply their intolerante ideology on us. Cases abound. If you tolerate intolerant people, eventually the intolerant people grow to a point where they snuff out the tolerant people. So, the only thing we can't be tolerant to is intolerance, which in and of itself is paradoxical because you can't be against the very thing you're about. It's you have to be intolerant of intolerance to be tolerant. No, it's not a paradox. It's similar to is justice a paradox? Because punishing someone for doing a crime could be looked at as a crime. The solution to the paradox is one of order. Who started it? An eye for an eye, so to speak. Can someone explain this in Israel-Palestine terms? Dunno what the paradox of tolerance is, but it sounds like being outraged and trying to impose consequences on people in the name of tolerance or some moral high ground. Outlet people here have explained it, but yeah. Think of it as a moral explanation for why it's okay to punch Nazis but not for Nazis to punch Jews. Some people argue it's not a paradox, but tolerance is a treaty. And if you don't abide to it, you also lose the benefits it allows. So it's not a paradox, but enforcing a treaty, since tolerance is not a given. What's the golden rule? That's right. Treat people the way you want to be treated. You are nice to everyone because you want them to be nice back. You include others because you want to be included. 2. When someone treats others badly, they're showing you they want to be treated badly back. They don't include others, so you don't include them either. When someone gives tolerance, they get tolerance. When someone gives intolerance, they get intolerance back.